What is actual investing? We believe that it's our real-world task to deliver thoughtful capital deployment. It's not about speculating over the short term, it's about understanding the long-term opportunities for companies through technological progress or new business models. So we seek out those exploring big, new ideas that will change the world. Then we back them to give those ideas time to flourish. Baillie Gifford, Actual Investors. Find out more at baileygifford.com.
AutoTrader is powered by Auto Intelligence, the hyper-personalized way to buy a car. With tools that sync with your exact budget and preferences, so you only see vehicles you can afford and actually want. Choose new or pre-owned, narrow by style, and select features, even trailer hitch. Go ahead and get picky. And with pricing, you'll see which listings are the best deals, so you can feel like you're winning the negotiation without negotiating. AutoTrader, powered by Auto Intelligence, makes car buying less of a process. Visit autotrader.com to find your perfect ride.
Wells Fargo announced a new $20 million program in 2025, teaming up with nonprofits to support small business owners. That's how Wells Fargo is helping strengthen small businesses and communities. Wells Fargo, the bank of doing. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/say-do.
Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is a breaking news update from Bloomberg. Instant reaction and analysis from our 3,000 journalists and analysts around the world.
Let's bring in Bloomberg Tech, B-Tech co-host Ed Ludlow, who will be speaking exclusively with Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang. That's coming your way at 6:30 p.m. Wall Street time right here on Bloomberg TV and radio. Hey, Ed, investors seem to be pretty happy. It's up about 2% here.
Right.
What's your immediate takeaway from these results?
Yeah, in the fiscal third quarter that they just reported, it's a beat and a good one. And this was a high bar going into it. And in the outlook for the fourth quarter, it's a good $3 billion above consensus, $65 billion plus or minus 2%. Remember, this is always the case. There were some very bullish forecasts on the street. I think some analysts were saying that Nvidia could even surprise us with a $75 billion figure for that fourth quarter. But the great unknown is the numbers that they've just posted. How do they relate to the $500 billion or $500 billion figure that Jensen Huang outlined at GTC in the last week of October? He basically said over the next 6 fiscal quarters, just for Blackwell-Rubin systems, they see $500 billion of demand. But Nvidia doesn't give formal guidance like that. It was just a slide over his shoulder on stage. So there is going to be some mathing based on what he says on the call, and hopefully in the conversation that we have, to explain how in aggregate their forecast has changed for the longer term.
Okay, so Jensen, if you're watching, just a little preview of the line of questioning that you may get from Ed Ludlow at 6:30 Wall Street time, Bloomberg Television and Radio, for that exclusive conversation. Ed, Nvidia shares off about, as of today's close, roughly 10% from those all-time highs back at the end of October. That was just around the GTC event in Washington, D.C., where I know you spoke with Jensen and Justin Hotard of Nokia as well. I'm wondering really about the narrative that's emerged since then about cracks starting to form or punctures in the quote-unquote AI bubble and the decline in some of the high-flying stocks that we've seen of late. Does this assuage investor concerns that not all is okay when it comes to the infrastructure spend? Yeah,
Nvidia is down sharply since the all-time high it hit 4 weeks ago. But it's also a stock that, as of today's close, was up almost 40% year to date, double the performance that we see of the NASDAQ 100 or the S&P 500. This, again, was a very high expectations quarter where there is also high skepticism to meet it. And two of the data points that we will inevitably hear asked of Jensen is the circular financing issue. Because a lot of the news flow in that period of time has been about Nvidia investing in some form in the frontier model labs or end users of their chips.
Yeah, look at the Anthropic news yesterday.
This week, right? And in that specific case, it's very hard to argue it is not circular financing. Because historically what Jensen Huang's argument has been is when they put an investment into an AI company, they don't require the AI company to use that capital or financing to buy Nvidia chips. They can go away and use Nvidia's money to buy someone else's chips. But in the mechanics of that Anthropic deal, it is a flow of capital from Nvidia into Anthropic, and then Anthropic buying capacity that does use Nvidia chips. The other data point is depreciation, which is a real fixation of this market at the moment.
So, one of the things we were talking about with Jay Goldberg, and we're going to get back to him in just a moment.
Sure.
He's over
We're letting him read the press release, and we're letting him actually look at the numbers right now.
But he talked about China remaining effectively online. How much of that is a problem? And I think we also heard from, this being kind of the first clean numbers that we're kind of getting? Was that Kunjan?
Yeah,
I think we
Kunjan
talked
that.
about, without kind of, I guess, China impact or China concerns. But Ed, how important is China going forward to the Nvidia story?
So, China is potentially the biggest end market in the world for data center. And right now, Nvidia assumes zero China. That $500 billion or $500 billion figure that I mentioned a moment ago that was given on October 28th excluded China completely. I've just put in the blog, and I'm just making an observation that if you go back to August, when Nvidia gave their forecast for the third quarter that they've just released, they were very clear in explaining that this did not assume any H20 sales to China. It's interesting, but there is no mention of the word China at all in today's press release. And so now it's kind of all stripped out. But as Jensen Huang has said repeatedly, it's a really critical market. A lot of activity is there. And Nvidia would like to be able to sell its technology into that market.
Jay, I want to just bring you back in. And we do see Nvidia shares climbing once again back up near that 4%. Mark that we saw in the aftermarket. It's up about 3.6, 3.7%. Jay, as you are going through the press release, anything that's jumping out that you think the Bloomberg audience needs to know about?
So far, nothing. I came to the same conclusion. There's no mention of China in here at all, which is good for now, but also concerning. It looks like their networking business, the networking side of their data center business, did a little better than expected. Which is great because that's high margin business. Is very they have a really solid position there. I mean, overall, it's a pretty clean quarter. I haven't gotten all the way through it, but I am curious to hear what Jensen's going to say about circular financing and those sorts of questions. Jensen is probably the most persuasive, charismatic CEO in semiconductors right now, and so listening to him on the quarter is always going to be interesting. I want to see how much energy he brings and how he's going to address some of those sort of stickier questions.
Hey, Ed Ludlow, come on in on this as you listen to Jay. Love to bring you into the conversation with Jay.
Yeah, I think the circular financing question is one that I've received in advance, of speaking to Jensen in a couple of hours' time. The other one for me is the depreciation issue. Right, Nvidia commits to this annual cadence of a new generation of GPU. And I think there are a lot of people out there who would really appreciate Jensen explaining the useful life cycle of any generation of GPU and how they manage that, how they convince the big spenders in a CapEx context to upgrade. Is that a concern for you? Is it something that you feel is unanswered?
Well, I think there is this dynamic taking place where Nvidia is trying very hard to prop up the neo clouds as alternatives to the traditional hyperscalers. He'd much rather have 100 small customers than 3 large ones. The problem is that will eventually conflict with that annual cadence, right? This whole issue about depreciation of how long a server lasts, I think people look a lot at sort of the physical life of the server, but the more important question is the economic life of the server. And if you have a new GPU coming out every year, the old ones become less valuable. And so that leads to some pretty punishing price curves for the neo clouds. And so Jensen and Nvidia want to constantly be coming out with new products to stay competitive and push their own sales up. But that makes it hard for these customers, the small ones, who have to also stay on that treadmill. And at some point, it can't go on forever. right? The neoclouds will eventually run out of money. And so that's sort of this big long-term picture outlook. And I mean, that's one of these things that keeps me, would keep me up at night if I didn't have a sell rating on it.
Well, okay, so Ed, I want you to kind of go back to Jay on this, because I know you've talked to CoreWeave CEO quite a bit in recent months. Yeah. We said that CoreWeave was higher in sympathy after these Nvidia results, in addition to another neocloud company that's out there. Right now, the demand is there for these neocloud companies. I mean, even CoreWeave said just very recently it's been able to diversify away from its biggest customers.
Yeah, in the conversations that we've had with Michael and Trader, that there is demand for the older generation technology. One sort of data point or statistic that those who are more calm about the depreciation issue would point to is utilization. So they would say right now the Hopper generation of accelerators or GPUs is running at 100% utilization in terms of workloads. It can't be used any more than it already is, as a very bullish signal that these kind of obsolete, sounds a funny thing to say, but these older generation GPUs are not idle. Compare and contrast with some of the secondary market data, which we have limited visibility into. We don't know how strong that is, and nor do we know how close attention Nvidia plays to the secondary market for older generations of chip. But 40% of revenue is the hyperscalers, and depreciation is an accounting issue that they need to mark against their balance sheets, and we haven't seen it yet. So it's kind of interesting because at some point, and I ain't an accountant, but basic financial journalism, it will come up.
Ed, hold on for a second. Jay, sure. Last question. Final thoughts on this. I mean, I'm looking at the Philadelphia Semiconductor Index up almost 2% in the aftermarket. A name like Broadcom is also up about 2%. And again, Nvidia still up about 3.2% here after its earnings. Final thoughts, Jay, from you when it comes to Nvidia.
So I want to respond. I want to close in responding to Ed's comment about utilization. I've certainly heard data points that utilization are high in the neoclouds, at least some of them, anecdotally. But if utilization is so high, why do AMD and Nvidia make it a practice to backstop capacity at the neoclouds as part of these deals? If you look across the sales process for GPUs right now, you'll see a lot of these big neoclouds have contractual terms which basically put AMD and Nvidia in the position of backstopping or buying up excess capacity. And it seems like a little bit of disconnect to me that you would need those backstops if utilization were so high. So I think there is definitely signs of froth in the neocloud sector, not necessarily CoreWeave or Nebius. I don't want to pick on them, but there are growing signs of friction in that corner of the AI trade, and it makes me cautious about the broader spectrum of things.
Ed, to be fair, I just want to bring you in on that if you have any thoughts for Jay.
Only that those that share some skepticism and want to ask difficult questions of Jensen would also point out that CoreWeave is one of Nvidia's biggest equity positions or equity investments. It's also one of its biggest customers technically, and they are in a position where CoreWeave's under pressure from its customers to have access to the latest technology. There is a disconnect there at some point. They can't be running both the old GPUs. But again, I think asking the basic question of depreciation and how Jensen Huang sees it, that's something that we will put to him for sure.
Yeah, it definitely has to be addressed. Jay Goldberg, thank you as always. You give us so much time. We so appreciate it. Senior Analyst, Semiconductors and Electronics over at Seaport Research Partners, as we've said, currently has a sell rating on Nvidia, the only such rating for the stock listed in the terminal, sticking to his conviction. Shares of Nvidia, by the way, still up about 3.6%. But Ed's still with us.
Ed's still with us. And once again, Jay, not just the only sell rating, but that price target at 140 in shares, closed today, at 160 something today? Or 180?
Yeah.
I have to go
186.
186, thank you. Go ahead.
No, Ed, as you think about, your conversation, Jensen, you've had many conversations with him at, different venues, different events. I don't know. What is really, you think, the most important thing to hear from him? We talked about depreciation and some other things, but I'm just curious what's top of mind for you here and what you really want to hear from him.
Electricity. It's fair to say I've had more terminal client IBs, more messages on social media, more people in the newsroom come up to me and say, like, we should probably talk about electricity and energy, because we don't really have a good line of sight to whether, if they can build all these data centers, and Jensen Huang does have a good line of sight on that, when the data center is built, finished, ready to turn the lights on, is the electricity there? And the answer is no. There's loads of deals out there, right? You guys would have done the red headline on the show today about the US or the DOE taking government ownership of nuclear reactors. But these are all deals on paper. They don't exist in the real world. I think that's really critical. The other thing is the press release says they're sold out of GPUs. I just asked him, what do you mean by sold out? Because they're ramping output. They're supply constrained. The demand is greater at any given moment than their ability to supply. But to say that something is sold out is a bit confusing, to be honest. And so we'll ask for some clarity on that.
Hey, Ed, before we let you go, last question. Ian King writing that inventory took a jump in the quarter. Normally at chipmakers, and just to remind everybody, Ian King has covered chipmakers for more than 20 years. That's a worrying sign, meaning the amount of unused product is going up. The company said it's to, quote, ordering to secure long lead time components, meet the demand for Blackwell, and support future architecture roadmaps. Is a little different than what it's traditionally done.
I thought they can't meet demand.
Yeah, inventory is typically bad depending on the type of chip, because it signals that no one's building up there. The customers aren't building inventory. By the way, Ian's covered semiconductors since 1998. At Bloomberg, so longer than 20 years. But Nvidia's argument has always been, we keep telling our customers, our suppliers, and our partners what we're doing for the next 5 years. That includes the memory chip makers and telematics, data center server design builders, so that everyone can keep pace. And the argument that they're making is that when they want to ship Blackwell accelerated computer systems at scale, the GPU, it can't just be the GPU that's ready to go. You need all the other components to go with it. And, with the stock up, whatever it is now, and after hours, 4% still, I don't think anyone's worried about that inventory number.
Yep.
Inventory days.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, good stuff. Hey, listen, kiddo, we will be watching, all of us will be watching, co-host of BTech, Ed Ludlow, as you know, catch him at 11 a.m. Wall Street time every Monday through Friday, but he will be speaking exclusively this evening with Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang. That's at 6:30 p.m. Wall Street time, and you can catch that on both Bloomberg Television and Bloomberg Radio, so be sure to check that one out. It is an exclusive, so he's got the conversation.
What is actual investing? We believe that it's our real-world task to deliver thoughtful capital deployment. It's not about speculating over the short term. It's about understanding the long-term opportunities for companies through technological progress or new business models. So we seek out those exploring big, new ideas that will change the world. Then we back them to give those ideas time to flourish. Bailey Gifford, Actual Investors. Find out more at baileygifford.com.
AutoTrader is powered by Auto Intelligence, the hyper-personalized way to buy a car. AutoTrader's tools sync with your exact budget and preferences to tailor the car shopping experience totally to you. Budgeting lets you input your info to see listings in your price range. Search and inventory helps zero in on your dream car. You can choose from new or pre-owned, the style of the car, and the features like engine size, color, all the way down to whether you want a trailer hitch. Go ahead and get picky. Don't worry about scrolling endlessly. AutoTrader, powered by Auto Intelligence, only shows you vehicles based on what you can afford and what you want. And pricing shows you which listings are the best deal, so you can feel like you're winning the negotiation without negotiating. You can even choose how to close the deal, online, at the dealership, or a little of both. AutoTrader, powered by Auto Intelligence, makes the process of buying a car less of a process. Try it today. Visit autotrader.com to find your perfect ride.
This is Jason Tipp from Hoops Tonight. Toyota is moving toward a more sustainable future by giving you the freedom to choose from an incredible lineup of trucks, now available in both gas and hybrid models, including the legendary Tacoma and powerful Tundra, both available with the iForce Max hybrid powertrain and backed by Toyota's legendary reputation for reliability and value. In fact, for 2025, Toyota is the best resale value brand for the 5th year in a row, according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com, with Tacoma ranked number 1, holding the highest projected retained value of any vehicle. Choosing Toyota means having more options and less compromise. So visit buyatoyota.com for a great deal on an efficient Toyota today. Vehicle's projected resale value is specific to the 2025 model year. For more information, visit Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com. Toyota, let's go places.
Well, Nvidia gave a strong revenue forecast for the current period, with sales expected to be about $65 billion in the fiscal fourth quarter. I want to bring in Bloomberg News big tech team leader Sarah Frier. She's also the author of No Filter, the inside story of Instagram. She joins us from Bloomberg's San Francisco bureau. So going into this, Sarah, there was this narrative emerging that there was concern that the AI bubble, if we're calling it that, may be losing a little bit of air, if we're going to stay with that metaphor. Concern about the hyperscalers, CapEx. We saw what happened with Meta Platforms a few weeks ago. Is that concern gone after reports such as this? Is everything all fine and dandy now?
I don't think the concern is gone, because I do think there are still some trends that are as noted in my colleague Ian King's stories, somewhat worrisome, right? The fact that Nvidia is investing in a lot of the entities that are buying its chips, right? So is there a way that they are indirectly funding demand for their product? There is the concern about China sales. We still don't have any forecast of sales to China, despite some of the loosening of the most restrictive policies from the Trump administration. And then there's also the question of everyone trying to come up with Nvidia alternatives for their chips, and some of the rivals starting to gain a little bit of traction. We saw a little bit from AMD. And then furthermore, just the idea that, so much of some of the spending on chips, on data centers, depends on having the physical infrastructure to really put them to work, and especially the energy, making sure that there is power to make all these data centers come to life with NVIDIA's chips. So I think that, although this is a company on a tear, we are in the NVIDIA economy. It is really propping up the stock market right now. It has altered the financial future of a lot of the companies my team covers, but can it last longer? Probably. And that's what this report is showing. But is it inevitable that it will, are all the fears in our past and we're not thinking about them anymore? Certainly not. I mean, we're going to keep looking at all of those trends and making sure that we can explain to people what is putting pressure on the future.
The one thing I want to, though, bring out, Sarah, and you're, there on the West Coast, San Francisco, the tech community front and center. So you hear things in and around, not just in the newsroom, but just in the area. And I'm looking at, the concerns about, like you said, maybe this doesn't put concerns to rest, but I'm looking at, Nvidia is certainly up in the aftermarket. I'm looking at NASDAQ 100 E-mini futures. They're up about 1.5%. S&P 500 futures are up about 0.9%.
Nvidia is big.
It's big. I look at the SOX.
That's a big effect.
The SOX is up almost 2%. And there's a bunch of other names in the space. So I think there was just so much fear that what if they missed those numbers and they, met on the data center revenue number for the third quarter, and fourth quarter revenue was up beating the outlook, right? So I think, does it feel like, I don't know, this community, just a little bit of a sigh of relief that, okay, they hit these numbers, they actually did better than what the street was expecting. And maybe that puts some of the concerns, under wraps for a little bit.
I think here, you're asking about the perspective here in the Valley. Here in the Valley, AI doesn't sound like anything that there's a sense that we're just at the beginning of this grand movement that will change the world, right? Maybe it's not even the LLM that will be the model that secures the future with AI. And so we're just now starting to see the applications of AI, the payback really for all of this investment. We haven't quite solved that. Where's all this revenue, the actual sales to companies that are going to pay for all of the chips that NVIDIA makes? We haven't really solved that problem to the tune of the billions that have been spent. But I think that here, you're asking about here in the Valley, it is very much, all systems go on AI. There is not as much of a concern about whether this is a bubble. People are seeing these big numbers, and they're thinking, the world is about to change even further.
How so?
People are thinking about how their jobs are going to change. They're using AI very, very much in their jobs and in their personal lives, like, relying on AI to help them make decisions for themselves and their families. And I think people are eager to create products that are going to take advantage of this as a new resource, whether that is going to dramatically lead to efficiency, more profits for the companies, given all the investment so far, it's sort of yet to be seen.
Yeah, it's just kind of interesting, right? I mean, here we are, almost 3 years in to this AI story, and most people say it's just early innings on all of this, but it's hard for, right? All of us who've covered, booms and busts and crises, and I'm not saying that this is any of that, but it's hard not to be a little bit skeptical when you see, Sarah, the spend over and over. And again, the conversations around the circular financing, and, it's hard. The logical side of your brain says, well, wait a minute, does this ultimately make sense?
Two things can be true, right? It's not necessarily either or. There can be a dramatic revolution in technology that will change our lives. And there can be irresponsible spending at the same time, right? We saw in the dot-com boom, for instance, that there were a lot of companies that had very dire circumstances at the end when that bubble burst and they had to shut down. But hey, we still use the internet. The internet is still a thing. So
it's a huge thing.
The what?
You're right.
The what?
So I think we might
Pets.com, not so much, but
sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
We're not necessarily talking about, a bubble burst, and that means that AI wasn't a thing and we shouldn't have thought that it was going to be so big. It could be that, there is still potential for a large financial correction down the road, but AI remains a force that changes how we do business and how we live our lives. So I think to put it in that stark of a either or is missing the larger trend.
This is why we come to you, because it's really,
she sees the big picture.
Yeah, and it's very balanced and thoughtful. Sarah, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Bloomberg News Big Tech Team Leader Sarah Frier. She's also the author of No Filter, the inside story of Instagram, and she is, of course, there from our Bloomberg San Francisco bureau.
Greetings from my bath, festive friends. The holidays are overwhelming, but I'm tackling this season with PayPal and making the most of my money. Getting 5% cash back when I pay in 4. No fees, no interest. I used it to get this portable spa with jets. Now the bubbles can cling to my sculpted but pruny body. Make the most of your money this holiday with PayPal. Save the offer in the app.
Ends 12/31. See paypal.com/promo terms. Points can be redeemed for cash and more. Pay in full subject to terms and approval. PayPal Inc. and MLS 910457.
You know what a girl's best friend is? Not diamonds, her lawyers.
From executive producer Ryan Murphy comes a fiery new legal drama.
It's our own boutique. Women representing women.
You can't afford to miss.
Make it rain.
Showtime, ladies.
Stand up straight and breeze into that room like a storm no one saw coming.
Hulu original series, All's Fair. Now streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus. For bundle subscribers, terms apply.
Ford was built on the belief that the world doesn't get to decide what you're capable of. You do. So ask yourself, can you or can't you? Can you load up a Ford F-150 and build your dream with sweat and steel? Can you chase thrills and conquer curves in a Mustang? Can you take a Bronco to where the map ends and adventure begins? Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. Ready, set, Ford.